A billionaire widower meets overweight bride left at airport, marries her the same day. A heartbroken billionaire widower finds himself reunited with the overweight bride who was cruelly abandoned at the airport, and in a stunning twist, they say "I do" without hesitation on the very same day. The billionaire wasn't actually looking for love after losing his wife. She wasn't looking for a miracle after being left behind. But one unexpected encounter at the airport turns into the most shocking wedding of the year. Before we go into details, click subscribe, like and comment where you're watching from. I would be glad to know this story goes as far as Canada, all of the United States of America, Australia, Africa, and even the United Kingdom. So let me know where you're watching from on comment section. I pray may the good God Almighty bless and preserve you all and your family. Amen. Let's begin. The airport was crowded, buzzing with arrivals and departures, the kind of place where stories begin and end every second. But for Lena Hart, this was where her story seemed to stop. She stood near the boarding gate of Flight 423 to Paris, holding a bouquet of white roses that had begun to wilt around the edges. Her hands trembled slightly. She'd been waiting for over an hour. Her fiancé, Ryan, had promised he'd meet her here before their flight. They were supposed to get married in Paris. His dream, his plan. Except he never showed up. People walked past her with luggage, families reuniting, lovers embracing, the rhythm of life moving on, while Lena just froze. Her phone buzzed. A text. "I can't do this. Don't wait for me." That was it.
No επάλεγη. No explanation.
Just those 6 words that sliced through her chest like glass. She sank onto a bench, her weight pressing against the cold plastic seat. Tears blurred her vision, but she blinked them away. Not here. Not in front of strangers. Not after all the jokes, the whispers, the "you're lucky he's even marrying you." Because Lena knew what people saw when they looked at her. A woman who didn't fit the world's cruel mold of perfection. A woman who wasn't Instagram beautiful. She'd fought her whole life to believe she was enough. And now, it felt like all that belief had been taken from her in one cowardly text. Across the terminal, a man sat quietly, watching the rain fall against the massive glass windows. His name was Ethan Cole, a billionaire known to the world as the founder of Coltech, but known to himself as a man who'd lost everything that mattered. 2 years ago, his wife, Anna, had died in a car accident. He hadn't smiled since. Money, success, fame, all of it had turned to ash without her. He came to the airport that morning not to fly anywhere, but to feel close to life again, to remind himself that the world was still moving, even if he wasn't. And that's when he saw her. A woman clutching dying roses, tears she was trying not to cry, staring at a phone like it had just destroyed her world. Something inside him stirred, not desire, not curiosity, but recognition. Pain recognized pain. He walked over slowly. "Miss, are you okay?" Lena looked up, startled. Her eyes were red, mascara smudged.
I'm fine.
"Thank you." She wasn't fine. And he knew it. He hesitated, then sat a few seats away, leaving respectful distance. "You look like someone just broke your heart." She let out a humorless laugh. "Guess I don't hide it very well." "You shouldn't have to," he said quietly. There was silence between them, a comfortable kind. The kind that exists between 2 broken souls who don't need to explain their pain to be understood. After a while, Lena sighed. "He was supposed to meet me here. My fiancé. We were going to Paris. Wedding, honeymoon, everything." Ethan looked at the roses in her hands. "And he didn't show." She shook her head. "Just a text. I can't do this." Ethan clenched his jaw. "Coward." Lena blinked in surprise. No one had said that. Everyone she told, her mother, her friends, would have said, maybe he had a reason. But this stranger, this man with tired eyes and a kind voice, said what she hadn't dared to think out loud. "Yeah," she said softly. "A coward." Ethan leaned back. "You know, people like that don't deserve your tears. You showed up. That makes you the brave one." Lena smiled weakly. "You talk like you've lost something too." He looked away, eyes clouding. "My wife. 2 years ago." "I'm sorry," she whispered. He nodded. "So am I." They sat there for another hour, just talking. About nothing and everything. Childhood dreams, bad coffee, favorite books. For the first time in a long time, Ethan found himself laughing. And for the first time in her life, Lena felt seen. Not judged, not pitted, but seen. When the final boarding call for Paris echoed through the terminal, she looked at the gate one last time, then at him. "Well," she said, half smiling. "There goes the flight I was supposed to take to start my new life." He stood, then held out his hand. "Maybe you still can." She blinked. "What do you mean?" "Come with me," he said simply. "Let's go somewhere, anywhere. Start your life, not the one someone else planned for you." Her heart skipped. "You don't even know me." He smiled, a small, broken smile that reached his eyes. "Maybe not. But I know what it's like to need a new beginning." And somehow, she took his hand. The automatic doors of the airport slid open with a low hiss, and a cool wave of wind brushed against Lena's face. It smelled like rain, exhaust, and a kind of freedom she hadn't tasted in years. Ethan held the umbrella steady above her as they stepped outside. The world felt bigger than it had that morning. Wider, louder, more uncertain. "Where exactly are we going?" she asked, hugging her coat tighter around herself. He looked thoughtful for a moment, then said, "Somewhere the world feels small again. Somewhere quiet." She raised an eyebrow. "You always talk like you're quoting from a sad movie." He smiled faintly. "Maybe I'm still in one." They stopped by the black SUV waiting at the curb. The driver opened the door without a word. Lena hesitated before getting in. This man was a stranger, a kind, gentle stranger, but still he noticed the hesitation. "You don't have to come," he said softly. "You can go home. Pretend today never happened." She looked down at the wilted roses in her hand. Home. That word didn't feel like a place anymore. "No," she said finally. "I've done enough pretending." She slid into the car. The drive was quiet at first. City lights gave way to open fields, the skyline shrinking behind them. Ethan leaned his head against the window, eyes half closed. Lena studied him, the sharp jawline softened by exhaustion, the streaks of silver in his hair, the way he carried himself like someone who'd built everything and lost everything twice over. "So, what do you do?" she asked finally. He hesitated. "Business." "Business? That's vague." He smirked. "Then let's keep it that way for now." She rolled her eyes, a tiny spark of playfulness returning. "You're one of those mysterious types, huh?" "Something like that." He looked at her reflection in the window. Her cheeks were round, her lips trembling slightly from the cold, her eyes raw but alive. There was something unguarded about her, something he hadn't seen in people for years. "Where are you from?" he asked. "Small town in Michigan. Moved to the city for work. Thought love would follow." And it didn't. She gave a short laugh. "It did. Just not the right kind." He nodded slowly. "The wrong kind teaches you more." "Did it teach you?" Ethan's eyes darkened. "It taught me that love doesn't die. People do." The car grew silent again. An hour later, they arrived at a quiet lakeside inn, one of those forgotten places with warm lights and wooden porches that creaked under your feet. The air smelled of pine and rain-soaked earth. The receptionist, an elderly woman with kind eyes, looked up as they entered. "Evening, dears. Room for two." Lena blushed. "Oh, we are not, I mean." Ethan cut in gently. "2 rooms, please." The woman smiled knowingly. "Of course." They checked in and parted ways for the night. Lena's room was small but cozy. Floral wallpaper, lace curtains, a fireplace that crackled faintly. She sat on the edge of the bed, the silence pressing against her. Her phone lit up. 20 missed calls. Her mother. Her best friend. Even Ryan. She opened his text. "You'll thank me someday. I couldn't spend my life pretending to love someone I don't desire." Her breath caught. The words stung more than she thought they could. She put the phone down and covered her face with both hands. The tears came hard and fast. She cried until her chest hurt, until the sobs turned into quiet sniffles. There was a soft knock on her door. Lena. Ethan's voice. She hesitated, then opened the door slightly. He stood there in a plain grey sweater, holding 2 mugs of steaming cocoa. I didn't know if you liked coffee or tea, he said, so I went for the universal cure for heartbreak. She smiled weakly and let him in. They sat by the fireplace. The light flickered across his face, tracing the faint lines around his eyes, the kind that come from both laughter and grief. He took a sip. You know, I haven't done this in years. What? Bring cocoa to crying women? He chuckled.
No.
Talk. Just talk. Lena leaned back against the chair. You're good at it. Maybe that's because I stopped long enough to listen. She stared into the fire. Why me? Why did you talk to me at the airport? He thought for a moment. Because you look like someone who still had something left to lose. And that's the kind of person who still has something worth finding. Her throat tightened. You sound like a poet. He smiled faintly. My wife used to say that. She thought I should write. Instead, I built an empire. You miss her. Every day. Silence. Then Lena whispered, Does it ever stop hurting? He looked at her, really looked, and said softly, No. But the pain becomes part of the love. You stop trying to escape it and just carry it with you. Lena nodded, tears glimmering in her eyes. Maybe that's what I need to learn too. The clock ticked quietly. The fire cracked. Outside, the rain had stopped. Ethan set down his mug. Come with me tomorrow. She blinked. Where? Somewhere special. You'll see. The next morning, the sun broke through the mist, laying gold over the still surface of the lake. Lena stepped outside, hair messy, wrapped in a borrowed coat. Ethan was waiting by the car, holding 2 cups of coffee this time. Morning, he said. Morning. Sleep. Barely. Good, he said. Means your heart's still alive. They drove in silence, the world passing by like a watercolor painting. Endless trees, winding roads, the smell of wet leaves. After an hour, they reached a small town. Cobblestone streets. A church bell in the distance. People walking hand in hand. Lena frowned. Ethan, where are we? He smiled. A place I used to come with my wife. She said it felt like time stopped here. Her breath caught. The way he said wife wasn't broken. It was tender, reverent. He parked near the old church. Come on. They walked slowly through the town. Children waved. A baker handed them free croissants for the happy couple. Lena blushed furiously. We are not, she started. But Ethan just smiled. Let them think what they want. They reached the lake at the edge of the town, the water glistening under the sun. Ethan took a deep breath. I brought her ashes here, he said quietly. This was the last place we were happy. Lena's eyes softened. Why bring me here? He looked at her, his voice low. Because I think she'd want me to remember what happiness feels like again. Her lips parted. The wind rustled through the trees. The moment hung between them, fragile, electric. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small velvet box. Her heart stopped. Ethan, what? He opened it. Inside was a simple gold ring. This was hers, he said. She told me once that if I ever found someone who made me smile again, I should give it away, so love wouldn't end with her. Lena shook her head. Ethan, no, you barely know me. He smiled, sad, soft, certain. I know enough. You remind me that there's life after loss, and maybe that's what I've been waiting for. Her eyes filled. You don't have to save me. He took her hand. Maybe you're saving me. And right there, under the morning sun, beside the quiet lake, the world seemed to pause. He said simply, marry me. Today. She stared at him. You can't be serious. I'm very serious. Let's give life another chance. Her heart raced. The rational part of her screamed no, but her soul whispered yes. And for the first time in her life, Lena followed her heart. The small-town church stood at the edge of the lake, old, beautiful, and alive with morning light that poured through stained glass windows. It smelled faintly of cedar and candle wax, the kind of place where time seemed to whisper instead of move. Lena stood at the entrance, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it echo in her chest. A few hours ago, she'd been a woman left at an airport. Now, she was standing at the threshold of something entirely unexpected and terrifyingly real. "Are you sure?" she whispered, turning to Ethan. He smiled softly, eyes glistening. "I haven't been sure of anything since Anna died. But this feels right." Lena swallowed, her throat tight. "We've only just met." "Sometimes," he said quietly, "the soul knows before the mind does." She looked at him, at the man whose presence calmed the noise in her heart, and something inside her cracked open. Not because she believed in fairy tales, but because for the first time in years, she felt alive. The church bell rang once, long and deep. The preparation. The townspeople were kind, curious, and excited. News spread fast in a small place. A wedding, today. A billionaire and a stranger. Though no one knew who Ethan really was. To them, he was just a quiet man in love. Lena found herself swept into the warmth of it all. A local seamstress offered to fix up a simple white dress from her shop window. A little girl handed her wildflowers for a bouquet. The same elderly innkeeper who'd given them rooms that night arrived with tears in her eyes. "Every love deserves a start," she said softly. "Even the ones that begin in pain." Lena stood before a mirror in a small dressing room. She barely recognized herself. The dress was modest but beautiful, hugging her soft frame gently. Her hair was pinned back loosely, a few curls framing her face. Her eyes, though still red from crying the night before, shimmered with quiet courage. She whispered to her reflection, "You are enough. You always were." The ceremony. Ethan waited at the altar. He wore a simple black suit, the same one he'd worn to his wife's funeral. It was symbolic, in a way, endings and beginnings woven into the same fabric. When Lena walked in, the small crowd fell silent. The soft creak of her shoes on the old wooden floor echoed in the stillness. Ethan turned, and when he saw her, his breath caught. She wasn't the polished, magazine-perfect woman society celebrated. She was real, tender, flawed, radiant with a beauty that came from pain survived and hope rediscovered. He felt his heart expand in a way it hadn't in years. As she reached him, he took her hands, warm, trembling. The priest smiled gently. "You two have come together today not by planning, but by fate's design. Sometimes love finds us when we least expect it." The ceremony was simple, honest. No grand speeches, no rehearsed vows, just two people trying to mend what life had broken. When it was her turn, Lena's voice trembled. "I don't know where this will lead, Ethan, but you've shown me that love isn't about perfection. It's about being seen and choosing to stay. So today, I choose to stay." Ethan's eyes glistened. His words came out rough, heavy with emotion. "Lena, you remind me that life doesn't end when love is lost. It begins again when we dare to feel. You've given me that gift. I won't waste it." The priest smiled. "Then, by the grace of new beginnings, you may kiss the bride." The room seemed to fade as Ethan lifted her chin gently, pressing his lips against hers. It wasn't a movie-perfect kiss. It was soft, hesitant, full of everything unspoken. And for both of them, it felt like coming home. After the wedding, the small town celebrated like it had been waiting years for this moment. Children danced, people clapped, and the bakery brought out an old cake from a display window, declaring it good enough for love. Ethan and Lena sat by the lake as the sun began to set, shoes off, their reflections rippling in the golden water. "You're really quiet," Lena said. He looked at her thoughtfully. "I haven't felt peace like this in years. It's strange. Good strange." He smiled. "The best kind." She picked at a blade of grass. "You never told me what you do, or who you really are." He chuckled softly. "Does it matter?" She looked at him. "It does, actually." Ethan sighed. "All right. I own Coltech. It's a software company. Big one." Lena blinked. "Wait. The Coltech? The billionaire Ethan Cole?" He nodded slowly. "That's me." She stared at him, speechless. You're that Ethan Cole. Asterisk the one on the covers of business magazines. Guilty. Her heart raced. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't want you to look at me and see headlines. I wanted you to see me. The man who still forgets to breathe sometimes when he remembers his wife. The man who doesn't sleep well. The man who saw you at an airport and thought, she's hurting like I am. Lena's eyes softened. You could have had anyone. I didn't want anyone, he said simply. I wanted someone real. Tears welled up. Ethan, I don't know how to be part of your world. He smiled gently. Then I'll build a new one with you. The first night. Later that evening, after the laughter faded and the stars appeared, they walked back to the inn, husband and wife in name, strangers still in heart, yet somehow connected by something deeper than time. Ethan stood at the doorway of her room. Good night, Mrs. Cole. She laughed softly. That's going to take some getting used to. He smiled, his voice warm. For both of us. As he turned to leave, she reached out and caught his hand. Ethan. He looked back. Thank you for choosing me when someone else didn't. He squeezed her hand gently. No, Lena. Thank you for choosing to stay when you could have walked away. He left, and she stood there long after, heart full of something new. Not fairy tale love, not yet. But something deeper. Hope. That night, as rain began to fall again outside, Ethan sat alone by the window in his room, staring into the darkness. He whispered to the silence, to the ghost of the woman he once loved. I did what you told me, Anna. I found someone who makes me smile again. I hope you're proud. And in the wind, for just a fleeting second, he swore he heard her voice. I am. Morning light poured through the lace curtains. For a long while, Lena didn't move. She watched the pattern of sun and shadow crawl over the floorboards and tried to make sense of the ring now resting on her finger. It felt heavy, not just from gold, but from everything it meant. A soft knock broke the quiet. Ethan's voice. Breakfast is downstairs. When she joined him, he was already at a table near the window, reading something on his phone. The smell of coffee filled the small dining room. He looked up and smiled. Sleep. She nodded. Strangely well. Like my brain finally gave up trying to understand all this. That's how beginnings feel, he said. Confusing, but necessary. They ate in silence for a while. Then her phone buzzed, again and again. Dozens of notifications. Her stomach tightened. She opened one. A headline flashed across the screen. Billionaire Ethan Cole marries mystery woman. Same day meeting at airport? Lena's hands went cold. Another headline followed. Overweight woman bags billionaire in 24 hours. The room blurred for a second. Every insecurity she'd buried came roaring back. Ethan saw her face and reached out. Hey, don't read those. She looked up, tears already burning her eyes. They're everywhere, Ethan. My picture, your name. People are saying horrible things. He took the phone gently from her hand and turned it face down on the table. I am sorry. I should have known it would happen the moment I told you who I was. You didn't do anything wrong, she whispered. I didn't think the world could be this cruel. He leaned forward, voice steady. The world loves to break what it doesn't understand, but we don't owe it an explanation. Lena shook her head. It's not just the headlines. My mom's calling, my friends. They think I've lost my mind. Maybe you've just found it, he said quietly. The storm. By the time they returned to the city 2 days later, reporters were already waiting at the gates of Coltech headquarters. Flashbulbs, microphones, questions shouted like stones. Mr. Cole, who is she? Did you really marry her the same day you met? Miss, were you paid for this marriage? Lena froze. Ethan wrapped an arm protectively around her and kept walking. His voice was calm but firm. No comments today. Inside the building, the noise faded. She could finally breathe again. But she saw the stares from his employees, whispers behind glass doors. Ethan, she said softly once they were alone in his office, I don't belong here. He turned to her. Lena, look at me. She did. You belong wherever you decide to stand, including next to me. His voice was so certain that for a heartbeat, she believed it. The cracks beneath the surface. Days turned into weeks. They learned small things about each other. Lena loved old movies and rainstorms. Ethan couldn't sleep without classical music playing softly in the background. She cooked breakfast every morning. He wrote her notes before meetings. But beneath the calm, tension brewed. Sometimes, she'd find him staring at the lake from the penthouse window, eyes distant. Sometimes, he'd call her Anna by mistake. One night, she found him in his study, holding a picture of his late wife. The candlelight flickered over his face. Do you still love her? She asked. He didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. Yes. I always will. But loving her doesn't mean I can't love you too. She nodded, but her chest ached anyway. I just don't want to be her shadow. He looked up, eyes shining. You're not. You're the light that makes the shadow less dark. The confrontation. One afternoon, Lena's phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. Lena Hart. A woman's voice asked sharply. Yes. This is Catherine Vale, from Society Weekly. We'd love to feature your story. People are calling it a modern Cinderella tale. Lena's jaw tightened. We are not interested. But the woman continued, almost gleefully. We've also spoken to Ryan. Your ex-fiancé. He says the whole thing's a publicity stunt. Lena's blood ran cold. What did you say? He claims Ethan Cole paid you to fake a marriage for attention. Lena hung up. Her hands trembled. When Ethan came home that night, she confronted him, voice shaking. Did you know they'd talked to him? Did you tell anyone? He frowned. Of course not. What happened? She showed him the messages. They're saying you paid me. That I'm a con artist. Ethan's jaw tightened. I'll handle it. No, she snapped, surprising both of them. I don't want you to handle it. I want you to trust me to stand on my own. His expression softened. Lena, I'm not trying to control you. Then stop protecting me like I'm fragile. The silence that followed was heavy and real. Two broken people, learning that healing wasn't as easy as falling in love. The breaking point. That night, Lena packed a small bag. Not because she wanted to leave forever, but because she needed to remember who she was outside his world. She left a note on his desk. Ethan, I love you, but I need to stand without the weight of your name on my shoulders. I'll come back when I can look at myself and not see a headline. When Ethan found the note, he didn't call her. He didn't send people to find her. He just sat down, holding the paper like it was something fragile, and whispered, I understand. Because he did. Sometimes, the bravest way to love someone is to let them go and hope they'll return. Lena didn't go far. She found a quiet cottage on the outskirts of a coastal town 3 hours away, a place where gulls screamed at dawn and the sea kept its own rhythm. There was no Wi-Fi, no reporters, no whispers of Cinderella. Just air that smelled of salt and freedom. She rented a room above a small bookstore. The owner, a woman named Mara, barely asked questions. People come here to disappear, she said, handing over the keys. That's fine by me. For the first time in months, Lena woke without a headline waiting for her. She walked the shoreline in the mornings, collected sea glass, cooked simple meals. Every evening she wrote in a notebook, small things she wanted to remember. Day 3, I laughed at a seagull stealing someone's fries. Day 7, I didn't check my phone once. Day 12, I finally looked in the mirror and didn't flinch. Yet Ethan's voice lingered in her mind. You're the light that makes the shadow less dark. She wondered if he still believed that. Ethan's world without her. Back in the city, Ethan threw himself into work. Meetings blurred together. Nights stretched long and hollow. He told everyone Lena was visiting family, but his eyes betrayed him. His assistant found him more than once standing at the window, staring out over the skyline like he was searching for something he'd misplaced. Coltecker's board urged him to release a statement about the marriage scandal. He refused. She's not a scandal, he said quietly. She's my wife. Still, the whispers grew. He began to question whether he'd done her more harm than good. Grief had taught him how to endure absence, but this new silence, it felt different. Alive, aching. On the 21st day, Mara brought up a small envelope with Ethan's handwriting on it. Lena stared at it for a long time before opening it. Lena, you were right to leave. The world I live in swallows people whole. I never wanted it to devour you too. But I miss you. I miss the way you made quiet feel safe again. If you ever wonder whether I still believe in us, yes, every day. If you're building a life that feels like your own, build it. I'll be here, hoping there's still room for me in it. Always. The paper smelled faintly of cedar and his cologne. She read it 3 times, then pressed it against her chest. For the first time since she'd left, she let herself cry, not from sadness, but from something gentler. Weeks passed. Lena began working in a bookstore, arranging shelves, recommending novels to tourists. She started sketching again, something she hadn't done since college. The townspeople knew her simply as Lena, not Mrs. Cole. One afternoon, a teenage girl lingered near the romance section, hesitating before picking up a book. Good choice, Lena said. That one's about second chances. The girl smiled shyly. Do you believe in those? Lena thought for a moment. I didn't, but I'm learning to. That night, she wrote in her notebook, Day 48, maybe love isn't about being rescued. Maybe it's about learning to breathe on your own and still choosing to share the air. Rain returned one evening with a vengeance. The wind howled, rattling the shutters. Lena was closing up the shop when Mara burst in, breathless. Turn on the radio, quick. A reporter's voice crackled through the static. Breaking news from downtown. A fire has erupted at Coltech headquarters following an electrical fault. CEO Ethan Cole has been hospitalized with minor injuries after helping employees evacuate. The room spun. Lena gripped the counter. He's alive. They said minor injuries, Mara said softly. He saved people, Lena. He's a hero. But Lena barely heard her. All she could think was, he could have died and I wasn't there. The next morning, she packed her things. The sea, the peace, the borrowed quiet, it had served its purpose. When she reached the city hospital, the hall smelled of disinfectant and coffee. Ethan was sitting up in bed, arm bandaged, face pale but smiling faintly. He looked up as she entered, disbelief flickering across his features before it melted into relief. You came back, he whispered. Lena crossed the room and took his hand. You didn't leave me much choice. He chuckled, then winced. Fire alarms are loud, but apparently not as loud as my wife's heart. Tears welled in her eyes. Don't joke. I thought I lost you. You can't lose what's already part of you, he murmured. She rested her forehead against his. I needed time to find myself. But you're home, Ethan, even when I run from it. They sat in silence, fingers intertwined, machines humming softly around them. The world outside might still talk, still judge, but inside that sterile white room, there was only truth, the kind you don't have to explain. Ethan was discharged a week later. The doctors told him to rest, avoid stress, keep things quiet. He agreed, but anyone who knew him understood that silence had never been his strong suit. Lena moved him into the penthouse overlooking the river. For days, she stayed near, reading to him, cooking simple soups, helping him change the bandage on his arm. They didn't talk much about what had happened. They didn't need to. The hospital smell still clung to his clothes, and she caught him sometimes staring at the wall, lost in the roar of memory. One evening, she sat beside him on the couch. The city glowed through the glass, 1,000 small lights reflected in the water below. Are you sure you should be back here so soon? She asked quietly. He nodded. Work keeps calling, but I promised them I'd take it slow. She smiled faintly. Do you ever do anything slow? He laughed, then winced as pain rippled through his side. Maybe I'll learn. They fell into a comfortable hush. Outside, rain began again, tapping gently against the window. Do you miss the ocean? Ethan asked after a while. Sometimes, she said. It was quiet there, but the quiet got lonely. He reached for her hand. I don't want to take that peace away from you. You didn't, she whispered. You just reminded me that peace doesn't mean being alone. The next few weeks unfolded softly. Mornings with coffee and sunlight, afternoons filled with slow walks around the garden on the terrace. Ethan started playing the piano again. The notes filled the apartment, hesitant at first, then surer, until Lena found herself humming along. She began painting again, setting up a small easel near the window. Her first canvas was the view of the river, washed in dusk light. She painted the faint line of his reflection standing beside hers, two figures blurred together in color. Sometimes she still caught her reflection in magazines at the grocery store checkout, old headlines that refused to die. She would turn them face down, buy her groceries, and walk home. The world could keep its noise. She was learning to listen to smaller sounds, brushstrokes, breathing, laughter. One afternoon, as Ethan was dozing on the couch, the doorbell rang. Lena opened the door and froze. Ryan. He looked thinner, worn. A journalist's camera lingered at the curb outside, waiting. Lena, he said, I need to talk to you. She stepped into the hall, closing the door behind her. What do you want? I came to apologize, he said, voice low. They twisted what I said. I was angry. You didn't deserve that. She stuttered him. No, I didn't. But you didn't have to let them use you. I know. He shifted uncomfortably. You seem happy. I am, she said simply. It's not perfect, but it's real. He nodded, eyes down. I just needed you to know I'm sorry. Lena exhaled slowly. I forgive you, Ryan. But that doesn't mean you get to stay in my story. When she returned inside, Ethan was awake, watching her quietly. Ryan, he asked. She nodded. Do I need to? No, she said, cutting him off gently. You don't need to do anything. I already closed that door. Ethan smiled. That's my wife. That night, they ate dinner by candlelight. The rain outside had turned into snow, soft flakes drifting down past the glass. Ethan raised his glass of wine. To second chances. Lena met his eyes. To first real ones. They clinked glasses. Later, when the candles had burned low, Ethan took her hand and said quietly, You know, when I saw you at that airport, I thought you were the saddest person I'd ever seen. She laughed softly. Thanks. But also, he continued, the bravest. You were standing there, holding on to love that had just let you go. And I thought, maybe she's the person who'll teach me how to live again. She blinked back tears. And did I? He smiled. Every day. Spring came. The tabloids eventually lost interest. The world moved on, as it always does. Ethan returned to work part-time, and Lena opened a small art studio on the ground floor of their building. She called it The Quiet Room. Her first exhibition was titled Beginnings. Each painting carried a story: a wilted bouquet at an airport bench, a lake reflecting sunrise, 2 coffee cups on a hotel fireplace mantel. People came not because of her last name, but because of the way her art felt, raw, tender, alive. At the end of the exhibit, Ethan stood beside her as guests mingled. You did this, he whispered. We did, she corrected. No, he said softly, touching the back of her hand. You learned how to be enough for yourself. That's what love is supposed to look like. She looked up at him, eyes shining. So what does forever look like to you now? He smiled. Like this. Small moments. Shared quiet. Laughter when it's raining. They stood there as the room buzzed with life around them. 2 people who had lost, loved, broken, and rebuilt. Not perfectly, but truthfully. That night, back at home, Lena opened her notebook one last time and wrote, Day 365. We are home. Not a house, not a story. Just 2 hearts that stopped running from themselves long enough to find each other. She closed the book, turned off the light, and whispered into the dark. Thank you for finding me at the airport. Ethan's hand found hers beneath the covers. Thank you for staying. Outside, the city breathed, and somewhere beyond it, the sea kept its rhythm. The years folded quietly, one into another, like pages turned without hurry. The noise of the world dimmed. Even the old gossip columns eventually stopped dredging up the story of the airport bride. Ethan and Lena had built something slower, steadier. He still ran his company, but he spent most mornings on the balcony with her. She still painted, but sometimes she painted him, bent over a notebook, silver hair catching the light, the soft frown he made when he was trying to remember a melody. The apartment was filled with small reminders of how far they'd come, framed sketches of the lake, a vase of fresh flowers on the kitchen counter, a piano that now bore the marks of countless shared songs. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Lena woke to the smell of coffee. Ethan was standing by the stove, wearing an apron that said "World's Okayest Chef." She laughed. "That's false advertising." "Maybe," he said, sliding a plate of pancakes onto the table, "but the coffee's good." They ate together, sunlight spilling across the counter. After breakfast, he handed her a small box. Inside was a silver locket engraved with 2 initials, E+L inside. On one side was a photo of their wedding day. On the other, a tiny scrap of paper in her handwriting. "You are enough." Lena's eyes filled. "When did you steal that from my notebook?" "The day I realized it was true," he said simply. In the years that followed, Lena's studio expanded into a community center. She taught art to children, to veterans, to anyone who'd forgotten how to look for color. She told them that broken things could still be beautiful. People believed her because she said it with the kind of calm that comes from surviving your own storms. Ethan supported her quietly, fixing shelves, bringing coffee, listening to stories. When he walked in, the kid shouted, "Mr. Cole," as if he were some myth come to life. He loved it. At night they'd sit by the river, legs dangling over the edge, the water whispering below. "You know," she said once, "I used to think love was supposed to feel like fireworks." He smiled. "And now? Now it feels like this river. Always moving, always here." It was 10 years before the first sign that time was catching up to him. A tremor in his hand. A forgotten appointment. Doctors, tests, the quiet word they both dreaded. Early onset neurological disease. He wanted to keep it private. She refused to let it isolate him. "We built a life out of truth," she said. "Let's not start lying to ourselves now." They faced it together. Doctor visits, therapy, long walks when he could still manage them. Some days he'd lose track of words, and she'd find them for him. Some nights she'd wake to find him standing by the window, lost somewhere between past and present. "Do you know me?" she'd ask gently. He'd smile, faintly, as if from far away. "You're the woman at the airport," he'd whisper. "The one who stayed." She would take his hand. Always. The last summer was spent at the lake where they'd married. The townspeople still remembered them. The same little girl who'd once given Lena wildflowers was now grown, helping to run the inn. Ethan moved slowly now, his steps careful. They'd sit by the water for hours, the same quiet between them that had always been there, comforting, steady. One evening, he said, "You ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't spoken to you that day?" She smiled. "I think we still would have found each other. Maybe not at an airport. Maybe in some other waiting place." He nodded, eyes soft. "Waiting. That's what grief was. Just waiting for you." As the sun dipped low, he reached for her hand. "When I can't remember, promise me you'll paint it. Everything. So I can see it again." "I promise," she whispered. He passed quietly one autumn morning. The lake was still, the sky a pale silver. Among his things, Lena found a sealed envelope with her name written in shaky handwriting. "Lena, if you're reading this, it means the world finally let me rest. Thank you for every day you gave me after that airport. You taught me that love isn't a rescue, it's a return. You made me brave enough to live again. When I first saw you, I thought we were both broken. Now I know we were just unfinished. Keep painting. Keep laughing. And if anyone asks how we met, tell them the truth. We were 2 people waiting for a flight, and love took us somewhere better. Always. Ethan." Lena's final exhibition, years later, was called The Flight Home. The last painting in the series showed an airport bench bathed in golden light. A woman sat alone, roses wilting beside her, but the reflection in the glass behind her wasn't of emptiness. It was of a man reaching out his hand. Beneath the canvas, a small plaque read, Sometimes the story doesn't end where you thought it broke. Sometimes it begins there. People left the gallery in tears. Reporters wrote about redemption, about love, about courage. But to Lena, it was simply their story. The story of how two lonely hearts met in a place of departures and chose, against all odds, to arrive. That night, as she locked the studio for the last time, she whispered toward the darkening sky, "I kept my promise. I painted it all." And for a moment, she swore she felt a familiar warmth in the air, a hand brushing hers, and a voice, steady, loving, eternal. "You did, Lena. You brought us home." Please don't forget to like. Comments. Subscribe for stories.